I'm especially excited for this game because we're going to be there. Okay. And I'm especially excited for this third party Thursday because we got a pretty big guest. Okay. You got to stay tuned after this intro. We're going to be talking them boys. We're going to talk about our New York Jets. It's going to be a great conversation, great time. Preview. Woo! Week 5. New York Jets, Boy Green meets Wudi.
Can you guys help us get a Jet chant here? Yeah, going.
Oh.
Okay, yeah. Come on in.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go!
J-E-T-S, Jets, Jets, Jets! Let's go! J-E-T-S, Jets, Jets, Jets! Let's go! There you go,
Third Party Thursday.
Chris joining us here on the program with a capital P here on the program.
Jake Asman, come on down. How you doing, good sir?
Wow, what an intro. I mean, Boy Green is known for having the intro, but Wudi, that was unreal, man. Thanks for the kind words, son.
We are men of many names.
My favorite Austrian Jets fan right there,
Yeah.
baby.
Boy Green
Meets Wudi. Welcome to another episode of Boy Green Meets Wudi. We got the Cowboy here. You know it too. We got your Cowboy here. You already know. Hey, we Wudi, rocking everywhere. Right here, the boy who became Cowboy. Oh, I should have said the Cowboy that became King. That would have been so much better. We got none other than Mr. Paul Esden Jr. Hey. And speaking about Cowboys, we got the manager, the editor-in-chief with blogging with the boys, all right, at SB Nation. We got somebody who has been plugged into the Cowboys for as long as I've been looking at stuff about the Cowboys, which isn't that long, but you know, hey, we out here. Okay, this is somebody who has been appearing on shows when Kay Adams is blessing us with his presence. My God, it is an honor to say this name and say that he's about to be on this show. Boy Green Meets Wudi welcomes RJ Ochoa. Welcome down. How you doing, good sir?
Great to be with you guys. Happy Thursday. Happy Baby Friday. Happy weekend. Happy playoff baseball time. Our football teams are not doing too well, but it's the best time of year, and that's really all that matters.
That's it.
October.
That is 100% it. RJ, so it's awesome that we get to do this and put it all together. So let's talk about it. You know, the top headline, right? You guys are just coming off, that crazy-ass game against the Packers, Micah Parsons revenge game. But put that aside, the Brian Schottenheimer revenge game, baby. This has been circled on the calendar for some time. So what have you guys made of old Shotty finally getting his shot to be the 8C of DAL?
Yeah, this could be a much longer conversation, but it may be forgotten for Jets fans that the matter in which Brian became the Cowboys head coach was pretty toxic. The Cowboys dragged the Mike McCarthy decision out through the wild card round of last year's playoffs, and in the process costed themselves a chance to virtually interview both Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. And they got waxed by the former, obviously, 2 weeks ago, and we'll see how things go, obviously, on Sunday. But it wasn't until the divisional round began that Dallas even moved on from Mike McCarthy, and it wasn't until a week later, after the conference championship games were set, that Brian Schottenheimer's name first began to circulate. At the beginning, it was Kellen Moore and Robert Saleh. There is a bit of Jets incestuous nature tied into everything with the Cowboys here, and ultimately, Shotty kind of jumped to center stage because he was the betting favorite before he had ever even, been requested for an interview. That was how this all kind of came together. And people were pretty down on it. I mean, it was a really dark time. The Cowboys are a franchise that is unafraid to make, attention or unafraid to make moves. This was announced at 9 p.m. on a Friday. I mean, it was shameful. It was almost like they were trying to hide it. And so it wasn't until he started talking that people kind of began to sort of lower their guard. He has a pretty captivating personality, and I think that's won a lot of people over. But it ultimately comes down to football. And while they've got a record that I think people would like to see them improve upon, they also have an offense that is humming along, and that is the reason they're even remotely in these games. And I think that you obviously can apply that credit to a lot of areas, including Dak Prescott, but you have to give your fair share of credit to Brian Schottenheimer as the offensive play caller. So I think he's among the things that people trust the most right now. I do think that his return to the Jets is an interesting subplot. I talked about that with Jake Asman, who I know is a part of your intro video. And so he has yet to get a road win as a head coach in the NFL, and this would be an appropriate place for that to happen if it ultimately does.
So, RJ, I want to follow up there because I appreciate you sharing the timeline with some Jet fans that may have forgotten, or Cowboys fans who are also watching in this to remind them about that unique process. But while that may be unique in itself, the Cowboys playing by their own rules and playing by their own timelines is something, quite frankly, we've become quite familiar with. The Micah Parsons thing, of course, how that rolled out. We'll get into that later, I'm sure. You just mentioned the Mike McCarthy thing, and these aren't the only times this has happened, but these are two of the more recent. Why do the Dallas Cowboys operate on this own timeline? Some of the contract negotiations with Dak and CeeDee Lamb, like, why do they do this? Because on the outside, a lot of us go, man, if you pay them early, then that would be benefit this. And we do this. Obviously, we're on the outside, so we're not Jerry Jones. We don't get to make some of those big boy decisions. But why do the Cowboys feel like they can just do their own timeline and screw everybody else?
Because people watch no matter what. I mean, that's the cold reality, right? Like, I mean, how are they still making Fast and the Furious movies? That's kind of
Jesus.
What this is. It is illogical to your point. I mean, and we've all, screamed, at the air about this many times. You touched on several instances. They delayed the Dak deal several times, not just once, not just twice, but 3 times over. They delayed the CeeDee deal. Obviously, Micah, you mentioned that. I mentioned Mike McCarthy. They let Mike McCarthy coach through his contract, and they let his predecessor, Jason Garrett, coach through his contract twice. And just like Mike McCarthy, they went the wild card week of following Jason Garrett's, second contract with the team, kind of letting him, float in the wind. And it was sad. It was pathetic. I mean, Jason Garrett was like begging for his job while they were, interviewing Marvin Lewis at the time. And it creates these toxic headlines that benefit no one. And I think that, as it relates to the contract, that there are 2 very illogical hypotheses that make the most sense. But, when you're this deep down the rabbit hole, you have to consider some pretty stupid stuff because this is the way they're acting. And one is that they just want the attention, that they do it, that they've allocated whatever you want to call it, however you want to quantify, $15 million of salary cap space as marketing, right? Like, by acting the way they do, they ensure that they will headline First Take or whatever, throughout April and May and June and July. The other theory that people have is that they simply don't have the liquid cash, which is absurd, obviously, to suggest about a franchise as valuable as them. But when you consider the way they behave, again, you have to ask yourself, well, why isn't this happening? And so it's difficult to defend. But nevertheless, there are people who, even in the aftermath of the Micah trade, are sitting here saying that the Cowboys were fully right, that they committed no wrongs, and that, this was all Micah and his agent and whatnot. And I think there's blame to go around there, but that there are, they aren't as popular as kind of the national fan base, I think, would believe, but there are the We Dem Boys people out there. And those are the ones who, buy the foam hats and foam fingers.
Yeah. I definitely so I got a few cousins that definitely got some foam fingers in the house. And when that Micah trade happened, I was, tapping in with them. Hey, how's it going? And they, to your point, weren't that mad. They said, hey, Kenny Clark is good, and we got extra first round picks. And then of course we seen the showdown, the Packers and the Cowboys, and that was a pretty competitive game. I don't know where they found that 1 second at the end of OT. I'm not sure where they found that second, but they gave it to them, and the score was what it was. But how do you feel about that trade, and how that impacts the team moving forward, and Kenny Clark's play through the first quarter of the season?
I think that multiple things can be true, and I would not have made the trade. I would have taken, this is super easy to say, but I mean, we see it happen often in the NFL. I would have taken care of Micah in March of last year, 2024 to be specific. And I would have been able to have done that because I would have taken care of Dak and CD in March of the prior year instead of dragging Dak and CD out through 2024 the way that they did. So these things were all avoidable, to be clear. The way that they currently are going to become avoidable with George Pickens or Brandon Aubrey or whoever is ultimately up next. And even if Micah sucks forever, even if Kenny Clark wins Defensive Player of the Year, it's still a dumb trade. It's insanely dumb. You simply cannot justify this. And especially, if it doesn't make it look worse if the Packers are a playoff team in the first round picks or near the back of the order and whatnot. But it's difficult to fathom. My ultimate TLDR here is that for whatever reason you believe the Cowboys like to play these stupid games, they finally won a stupid prize. Somebody finally was willing to, kind of call them on it. And then they did what they could, and they've continued to do what they could to make lemonade out of the situation. And the hope is that they maybe learned from that maybe playing these stupid games is unwise. We have seen them in the aftermath of the Micah deal extend Deron Bland, extend Hunter Lipke, extend Tyler Smith. And so in that sense, they are, walking the walk finally. But these things all could have happened. This isn't a matter of, just because the Micah deal didn't happen now we can pay Deron Bland and Tyler Smith. No, you could have done all of these things all along. And that's what frustrates me, is that there is this understanding from some people that this was a necessary sacrifice and it didn't have to be that way. So it is interesting. It certainly adds to the narrative that they played so well offensively against Micah. It is funny that he had what you could argue was the game-saving sack from a Green Bay perspective, in that the Cowboys had to settle for a field goal instead of getting a touchdown there in overtime. I mentioned that they have an incestuous relationship with the Jets. That's nothing compared to what they have with the Packers. I mean, this was Green Bay's first game in the building since the playoff loss that they handed them in the 2023 wildcard round. Mike McCarthy, Dez caught it, Aaron Rodgers on 3rd and 20 to Jared Cook. Like, there's all these moments between Dallas and Green Bay. And so on some level, it's poetically correct that Micah would wind up there and that they would tie, of all things, in prime time on Sunday Night Football. It was perfect in the most frustrating way possible, is maybe the best way to say it.
That makes a lot of sense. Again, we're speaking with RJ Gosh darn Ochoa, baby, our Dallas Cowboys guru, and I am old Paul Cowboy Green, baby, here on the program, which is going to be a lot of fun. Now, Jerry Jones joined my good buddy Gary Myers on his ESPN New York show, and I'm sure you guys caught it down there in Dallas, and he was forthcoming that basically he initiated a call to the New York Jets. He was interested in Quinnen Williams and some first-round pick extra action. That ended up not going anywhere, so it died. But there is intrigue because the Jets are in this horrific spot at 0-4. The Cowboys seem like, even with Kenny Clark and his age and everything, that they could still use more defensive tackle help. They were interested in him once. I'm curious whether it's in the middle of this season or we get to the offseason. Do you think we them boys may circle back around to the Jets and say, hey, you guys thought you were here. You're actually here. You stink. We'll take Quinnen Williams off your hands, and we got all these extra picks. Could you anticipate the Cowboys circling back around to be interested in a big boy Quinnen Williams trade for some big boy picks?
I don't think so. Now that they have Kenny Clark, I think it made more sense without him as a part of the roster. And he's played very well. I think you can make an argument that, and this is a low bar to be fair, that he's been the best defensive player on the team through 4 games. And so the math just is a little bit different than it was at that point in time. But that also serves to my point why I don't believe they ever wanted to trade Micah. And that's, I know your question was about Quinnen, but my criticism of this team is ultimately that they don't have a singular North Star. If you want to tank, fine. If you want to contend and go all in, fine. Like, I may disagree on the direction that all of your energy is headed towards, but 100% of your energy needs to be moving in one direction. And so, we'll end up with people like in our comments or on our YouTube channel, we'll be like, oh, they're clearly doing this. They're not clearly doing anything. If they hadn't signed Dak a year ago and hadn't signed CD and then traded Micah, cool, I'm with you. I'll walk that walk. They're very clearly purging for whatever reasons and trying to reset. But a year later, literally 365 approximately days after paying the franchise quarterback and franchise wide receiver, you trade away the best player on the team. Like, those things serve opposite, directions. And so that's why I think they traded him to Green Bay was because my colleague at SB Nation, Justice Mosqueda, who covers the Packers, he had written this article actually the morning of the trade. Green Bay is often referred to as the Siberia of the NFL, basically the place that nobody wants to play. Everybody hates it. I think the Cowboys traded Micah there because they thought he would like it the least. I think that, I say this with all due respect, the reason Jerry called the Jets was because they have a history of not playing well, and he thought Micah would be miserable on the field. And I think that they really wanted to stick it to him. And that was the reason he called the Jets. That was the reason they called the Packers. I think very highly of Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark, sure. But it wasn't because these are the things that made the most sense, because the Packers don't make sense. Why would you trade anyone to a team that has the potential to win the Super Bowl and attach yourself to their draft capital? The Jets certainly make sense. And you could even argue that you don't take multiple first-round picks from the Jets, because maybe this year's could have been, even with Mike on the team, in the top 10, in the top 5, whatever. Obviously, I don't hope that's the case for you all, but that's kind of where we're at, and those are the illogical things they do that bug me.
Damn, that was hurtful, but
I said all due respect, to be fair.
Then that's allowed. That's the rules based on how I understand them. So yeah.
No, but honestly, if we're talking the defensive side of the ball, which we've already talked about a little bit, are we looking at the two bottom of the barrel? Like, I think our two franchises this season have not been able to stop. I guess the classic saying is stop a nosebleed, but I mean we can't even stop nothing. They can't stop traffic. Come on now. So let's talk about that real quick, because obviously I know you traded Micah, got Kenny, but there's some other names on there, right? I thought, hey, come on now, Trayvon Diggs, Deron Bland, like you said, extended. There were some names. The Jets have their fair share of names, Sauce and all that, but can't stop anybody. So from the Dallas side of things, how did we get here? Is it Matt Eberflus? I know he catches a lot of flack. Let's dissect that one.
I think this is a bit of attrition finally taking its toll. The Cowboys defense was amazing for the early part of Micah's obviously time with the team, and he was drafted in 2021. Just for kind of full context, Dan Quinn left after the 2023 season, that embarrassing loss to Green Bay, and to become the head coach in Washington. And last year, I mean, I don't mean to, I know I've already beleaguered the 2025 year, but I don't mean to dip into 24. This was, literally a front office that sabotaged their team in 2024. They sent Mike McCarthy into a contract year. Their biggest move, and I'm not, exaggerating or trying to be funny, their biggest move was signing Zeke Elliott in free agency last year. And so, they were all kinds of bad, and they hired Mike Zimmer to be their one-year defensive coordinator to just kind of, sit shotgun with Mike McCarthy on the ride that was headed completely and totally south. And so now they're on their third defensive coordinator in as many years. And they're on record in saying that Matt Eberflus would have had that job even if Kellen Moore had gotten the head coaching job, not Brian Schottenheimer. So this is a front office that does those types of things. I know that the Jets have their issues of front office meddling and whatnot, but they're a fraction of what goes on with the Cowboys, I can assure you. And so I think that Matt Eberflus is I really do think highly of him from a defensive standpoint, but they've lost a lot of players who were a part of that 3-year run. They obviously don't have Micah Parsons, and obviously had him traded away 7 days before the season began. Trayvon Diggs is not only not his prime self, but he's injured and coming back from injury. Deron Bland's coming back from injury. Their third-round pick, Savon Ravel, has yet to play for the team because he's coming back from an injury suffered in college. And their best player now defensively, DeMarvion Overshown, may not hit the field till Thanksgiving, maybe even after, coming back from an just absolutely devastating knee injury. So the cupboard is bare. They have a very, at the moment, non-creative, chef, pulling from it. And this is, to be clear, an episode of Chopped, right? And so on some level, it's, hey, dude, how can you not make, food with baking soda and Fruit Loops? But at the end of the day, this is still a chef, right? It's a world quality, world-class chef that is in the kitchen and that you do expect to be able to handle this kind of thing. And that's where, we, at least over the last few weeks, have kind of said, well, the offensive line is beaten up. Their starting center, Cooper Beebe's been out. Tyler Booker, their first-round pick, was out last week. Tyler Guyton had to leave last week, their first-round pick last year. And yet Clayton Adams and Brian Schottenheimer are able to make that lemonade in a way that Matt Eberflus can't. And so I know you think the Jets defense is bad. Again, I would swap in a heartbeat. I wouldn't even hesitate. I would swap so fast that it would be embarrassing. Somebody said to me yesterday they said, well, Justin Fields presents a threat to the Cowboys because he's a mobile quarterback. And I said, he presents a threat because he plays football. Like that's the like kryptonite is that all you have to do is be a football player, and this defense is going to make you shine. For the fourth time in franchise history, they are riding a 3-game streak of opposing quarterbacks throwing at least 3 touchdowns against them. If you're stressed about Justin Fields, I would offer that the one who threw the most in that run was Caleb Williams, who the whole world had decided was terrible, and he threw for 3 in the first half alone.
Wow. Well, that's encouraging. I saw that tweet a couple days ago. I was like, ooh, baby, that's exciting. Again, we're speaking with RJ Ochoa here. Make sure you guys like the video, hit subscribe. So it sounds like the game is sort of described on what we think it's going to be. Where do you draw the line in the sand? It sounds like it's a sprint. It's a race. Who gets to 45 first, 50? What's the score that we're drawing in the sand here? Because me, again, as Wudi said earlier, we're going to this game. I'm bringing 60 of our members of this channel to the game, which is going to be a lot of fun. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of scoring between both teams.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly anticipate that. And I would caution you all next week to not take the cheese, to not, next Sunday be all, what happened? The offense looked great. I would go look at the way I know they won, but the way the Bears offense looked in Las Vegas last week, it was not, world on fire setting or anything like that. So I think that I've picked the Cowboys to win this game. And again, I'm saying no offense. So nothing I say here can be deemed offensive.
Of course, with all due respect.
But they, the Jets just don't have the same offensive horses that the Packers do. And so even though the Cowboys will absolutely give them a chance, I just don't think that they'll be able to go shot for shot in the way that Jordan Love was able to. And so I think that, Dallas technically tied that game. I think Dallas is more able to survive, just kind of outlast the Jets in this game in a way that they quite weren't able to against the Packers. I mean, they scored a game-winning touchdown inside of a minute last week against Green Bay, and ultimately tied in overtime. So I do think highly of Justin Fields. I think highly of Garrett Wilson. I really like Aaron Glenn. I root for the Jets. I think it would be awesome to see them turn it around. I just don't think it's quite going to happen this week, personally.
And to do a follow-up on this offense, so my dad is a diehard Dallas Cowboys fan.
I remember you saying this.
Interesting relationship, which has connected all of us together forever. And we went down to the Jets-Cowboys game in 2023 in week 2. We had bought those tickets long in advance. We're like, oh, Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott. Oh, what a hoot. It was Zach Wilson instead, so that was its own journey. But in that game, Dak was amazing, so it wouldn't have even mattered what happened. He was just so spectacular. And once again, he's playing at a spectacular level. And what is that sauce? Why, especially since, and this is what my dad tells me, he's the one, if the Cowboys are not playing when the Jets play, and that happens all the time. So I've seen like every Cowboys game for like 1,000 years in a row. That I'm a classic Cowboys fan, is that when CeeDee Lamb hasn't been there for Dak, that has normally not been very good. And that doesn't take rocket science analysis to figure out why. But it seems like George Pickens has more than served in that role, and they continue to cook in that kitchen. So what is clicking for Dak? He's the highest paid quarterback in football, so I'm not trying to sell some Staub story here, but Dak's awesome. Yeah,
I think that, they had not had multiple receivers to hit 800 yards in a season since 2021. So that's most of CeeDee Lamb's career with the Cowboys. He was drafted in 2020. So for the most part, it has been CeeDee and some dudes, like you got an occasional play from Kevontae Turpin. That's cool. Maybe Jalen Tolbert makes a circus catch once every 8 games or something like he did. They just burned that coin obviously last week, but that's the reason that they lost to the 49ers the second time around in the divisional round when they lost to Brock Purdy was because Tony Pollard got injured. He had a hip drop tackle, and they just had no playmakers, and they just were, bringing a knife to a gunfight type thing. So having George Pickens, this is a 1-game sample size, to be clear, obviously not having CD this year, but George Pickens was stellar, $134 and 2 touchdowns. Jake Ferguson is healthy. He wasn't last year and is playing at a high level. But I think if I really have to define what the catalyst is, it's the run game. And look, we all laughed at them when they signed Javonte Williams. I mean, I can't tell you like how much we ridiculed. I'm an Arizona State Sun Devil, and I was real pissed off that they didn't draft Cam Skattebo. And I mean, that if there are like 5 times a year that I have to legitimately apologize to them, and this was one. Like respect. This has worked out, and that opens a lot of things up. That having that balance. Obviously Brian Schottenheimer, succeeded in that way for the Jets, and obviously his father and Marty Ball and all that stuff. That really has, I think, just been a calming presence to be able to rely on it. People love and cherish the 2014 Cowboys season. That was the year that Dez caught it. And that was the year DeMarco Murray had just this incredible season for them. Early in that year, they fell down in St. Louis to the Rams 21-0. And they did not abandon the run. They did not just turn into a team that was throwing the ball a million times, and they came back and won. And it was because they were able to run the ball so effectively. And you wouldn't think about that, in a 21-point hole. But having that matters. I'm not some primitive, you got to run the ball to set up play action, thinker or anything like that. But having that balance, Zeke provided a lot of wonderful memories for this team, but from like 2020 through 2023 was just a dude out there. I mean, so they finally have some juice and some horsepower. And I mean, Javonte Williams is on fire right now. He's one of the best running backs in the NFL. And that's given Dak a point of dependability that, he doesn't have to be like the archetype of who Superman is. He can just take the throws that are there, and he's able to do that right now.
Yeah. I drafted Dak and CD in my fantasy team. And I think I missed out with Javonte. And, he was still there in the 10th round, the 12th round, and I really messed up. Can you believe I actually also drafted Miles Sanders? So
I was on the Jaden Blue train, so I guess we're all just sort of passing it around with different guys.
On that note, Jaden is this doesn't happen often, but I don't know who this would be for you all, maybe like a Rutgers person, but Jaden went to the University of Texas, so there's a lot of people who want to see him play for the Cowboys, obviously, and so he's set to make his debut this week. He's been inactive every week so far this season. The coaching staff hasn't totally felt like they could trust him based on reports. But they are down CeeDee Lamb, and as of yesterday, down Kevontae Turpin. So they kind of need that extra playmaker, that extra body, that extra kind of gadget guy, if you will. Just, you don't want to take the ball out of Javonte Williams' hands, but you need another dynamic option. And so this is looking like the week that I actually was just writing that as we started the show. That Jaden Blue is set to make his Dallas Cowboys debut.
So let's get into that. What is the latest injury report? Because you mentioned there's a lot of injuries for the Cowboys, including the trench warfare on that offensive line with Tyler Guyton and the concussion and all that other stuff that's going on. What's the latest that we know, Dr. Ochoa?
Offensive line, no Cooper Beebe, no Tyler Booker. That's center and right guard. Tyler Guyton, who you mentioned, is in the concussion protocol. You never know how that's going to go. If I had to guess, like purely guess, it would be that he plays. That's the left tackle. So at center, Dallas is playing Brock Hoffman, who's played center before and played fairly well. And at right guard, TJ Bass, who's been another interior lineman point of depth for them. So it hasn't been that bad. And that they were able to stand tall against that stout Packers pass rush that the Cowboys obviously helped out with the trade was really impressive. Elsewhere, CeeDee Lamb still obviously coming back from the ankle issue. Now Kevontae Turpin's dealing with a foot thing. So he has been, outside of George Pickens, obviously the most potent pass catching option for Dak Prescott from a receiver standpoint. And defensively, Trayvon Diggs did not start last week. That was more of a disciplinary thing from the Cowboys as opposed to an injury-related one. On track to start. They are dealing with all sorts of just kind of questions. Savon Ravel, like I said, their third-round pick was on the NFI list. Jonathan Mingo, who they traded for last year, was on IR to start the season. So was Kalen Carson. So they have dudes that are on their way back, but certainly not in time for this game on Sunday.
Okay, well, hey, I can't even get excited because I feel like the Jets, we're like, oh, this person's out, and then the next person comes in. I'm expecting Jaden Blue to have 100 yards, 100 all-purpose yards against the Jets because that's just how it works out. I'll never forget Week 1 against the 49ers. Saying, oh, Christian McCaffrey's out. And Jordan Mason just gashed up, carved us up. It wasn't even Thanksgiving, still getting carved up like a turkey for like 120 yards. So I'm definitely expecting, like you said before, RJ, I think it is going to be a shootout, but we just, we got water guns and y'all got the AK.
I mean, the Cowboys are favorites on the road. It's the first time this season that's been actually, no, they were favorites in Chicago. I mean, if you are looking into anything, they were 1.5 point favorites there. That looks really silly, obviously. And again, I mean, Ben Johnson really seemed to personally dislike the Cowboys. I haven't personally gotten that vibe from Aaron Glenn. I don't know how well you all remember near the end of the 2023 season, Dallas hosted Detroit on a Saturday night, and it was a kind of a crazy game. And that was the Dallas did benefit from an improper ruling when Dan Skipper reported as eligible, and he was called for not doing so, and Detroit did not get a 2-point conversion that Dan Campbell still went for, and they lost. And they have been like the biggest babies about that for a year and a half, and just, complained about it. And last year when the Lions visited the Cowboys, were hell-bent on getting a touchdown to an offensive lineman just as some point of restitution. And so Ben Johnson kind of seemed to still feel that way about the Cowboys when Dallas went to Chicago 2 weeks ago. So again, offense and defense are different things. I don't know that Aaron Glenn, it wasn't his side of the ball in Detroit that was scorned by that or improperly, whatever, in that 2023 game. But he's cut from that same cloth is my point. So I would not be shocked if, and again, the universe just like laughed at the Cowboys 2 weeks ago because they did not even have a chance to virtually interview Ben Johnson because of how they acted with Mike McCarthy. Aaron Glenn is the exact same way. And that, there are so many storylines with the Cowboys that kind of flew under the radar in the aftermath of the Chicago loss. But it is funny that the head coach who you didn't even, care to make a decision on so that you could talk to, even virtually, that he owned you, he pwned you, to go back to like 2008 or whatever. And so Aaron Glenn is he has that same opportunity to pwn the Cowboys, PWN.
And by the way, salute to Aaron Glenn, former Cowboys legend, for
That's
that
right.
time down there with Dallas. Appreciate that. Well, RJ, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. Again, these Jets-Cowboys games are happening all the time now, which is a lot of fun for me and my dad, who will also be going to that game this weekend. We'll be talking shit to each other, I'm sure, during the entire contest. But thank you so much for setting us up for it. You're a superstar, baby.
I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and rest of your season, health, wealth, and happiness. But this Sunday specifically, I hope you have the worst sports day. I hope you find like $100 bill on the floor and stuff. But from a sports perspective, I hope you just hate life.
And I just want to say, I appreciate the honesty, because a lot of people will just say, hey, man, good luck. Yeah, really. I don't wish you any luck. I hope, I was about to say something horrific, actually. I was going to say, I hope you trip down the stairs or something, but that seems a little aggressive.
I hope your food is delicious. I hope,
great.
I hope you get green lights in traffic. You know what I mean? I hope all that stuff happens for you. But I hope your football team embarrasses themselves this Sunday. After that, I'm good. But just this Sunday.
Okay.
Well, it's been happening the previous Sundays, but yes.
Well, that's
this
true.
one okay as well.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, like the video, hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.